The sun was a pale orange circle in the dusty sky. June wiped sweat from his face with his arm. The air was hot and still. It smelled of dry dirt and machine oil. He was kneeling next to the big water machine for the farm. The machine was old and rusty. It made loud, unhappy sounds. His father, who June called Appa, was under the machine. Appa was hitting a broken part with a tool. Almost got it, Appa's voice came from under the machine. It just needs a good tap, June nodded. He handed his father a bigger tool when a dirty hand reached for it. This was their life. They lived on a farm at the edge of the human colony. It was a quiet life. It was a hard life. But it was their life. June's eyes were a deep brown. He stopped looking at the machine. He looked across the flat fields next to their land. Nothing grew there now. It was just empty ground and a few weeds. But 10 years ago, those fields were full of life. It was not human life. It was alien life. A camp for Ilarian refugees had been there. The Ilarians came to June's world scared and lost. Their own planet was gone because of a war. June was too young to understand the war. He remembered the strange silver tents they lived in. He remembered the soft musical sounds of their talking. And he remembered one of them, a girl. Her name was Kayla. A shadow fell over him. It was his sister Suman. She was 1 year younger than June. June was quiet. Suman was sharp and direct. She held out a cup of water for him. "You are staring again," she said. Her voice was not mean. She was just telling the truth. "You are staring at the ghost fields." June took the water and drank it all. "I was just thinking." "You are always thinking when you look over there," Suman said. She sat on an old box near him. She looked where he was looking. "You still think about her, don't you?" The alien girl. June did not answer. He did not need to. Suman knew. Everyone in the family knew, even if they did not talk about it. The memory of Kayla was a quiet sadness June carried with him. It was like a small, heavy rock in his pocket. He was 8 years old when he first saw her. The Ilarians had just arrived. The humans were told to stay away. They were aliens. No one knew if they were dangerous. But June was a curious and kind boy. He watched her from far away. She was smaller than the other Ilarians. Her skin was a soft, shiny silver. It seemed to catch the light even on dark days. She had large eyes the color of dark honey. When she was scared, her eyes seemed to glow from the inside. She was always alone, away from the others. She looked very lonely. One afternoon, June saw some older human boys. They were throwing stones near her. They were not trying to hit her. They were trying to scare her. They laughed when she flinched and made frightened chiming sounds. Something in June felt angry. He was not a big or strong boy, but he ran at them. He yelled at them to stop. He picked up a rock to look scary. The older boys were surprised by his anger. They laughed and walked away. They called him an alien lover. June walked toward the Ilarian girl slowly. He held his hands open to show he was friendly. She was shaking. Her silver skin was dirty with dust. He did not know what to do, so he reached into his pocket. He pulled out the sweet rice cake his mother gave him for a snack. It was a little smashed. He held it out to her. She stared at the cake. Then she stared at him. Her honey-colored eyes were wide with fear and confusion. "It's good," June said. He knew she could not understand. He took a small bite. He chewed and smiled. Then he offered it to her again. Slowly, her long, thin fingers reached out. She took the cake. She took a tiny bite. Her eyes changed. The fear went away. Surprise took its place. Then a tiny, thankful light appeared in her eyes. It was the first time June saw her not look scared. That was how it began. Every day after that, June would find her. He brought her little things. A shiny piece of metal. An interesting leaf. Sometimes more food. He started teaching her words. "June," he said, pointing to himself. She watched his mouth carefully. "June," she repeated. Her voice was a soft musical whisper. He pointed at her. He had a questioning look on his face. "Kayla," she chimed. He smiled. "Kayla." He taught her friend. He taught her tree, pointing to the big old oak tree between their farm and the camp. That tree became their secret place. They met there every day. He would talk about his life. He talked about his Appa fixing machines. He talked about his sister Suman, who always found trouble. He talked about his mother, who had died. That memory was both sad and warm. Kayla would listen. She learned the sounds of his language. She sometimes tried to tell him things. Her hands moved in the air. Her chiming sounds went up and down. He did not understand the words, but he understood the feelings: sadness, fear, and sometimes, when they played a game chasing fireflies, happiness. The Galactic Coalition was the big government for this part of space. They put the Ilarians in the camp. They said it was to keep them safe. But as years passed, the humans heard whispers. The Coalition was not just protecting the Ilarians. They were assessing them. They were deciding what to do with them. The camp was supposed to be temporary. It started to feel like a prison. One day, when June was 10 and Kayla was a similar age, the mood in the camp changed. Big gray Coalition ships landed. People in sharp uniforms came out. They talked to the Ilarian leaders. Their voices were hard. Kayla came to their tree that day. Her whole body shook with fear. "They are taking us away," she said. Her basic words were still clumsy, but they were clear enough to break June's heart. "To another place, a sector." "No," June said. His eyes filled with tears. "They can't. This is your home now," but it was not. The grown-ups were making the decisions. The day the ships came to take them was the worst day of June's life. He and Kayla stood under their oak tree. They held hands. Her silver skin was pale with fear. June's mind raced. He did not know what to do. He was just a boy. He felt powerless. He looked into her glowing, honey-colored eyes. They were shiny with tears she had not yet cried. He wanted to make her a promise. It was the biggest, most important promise a 10-year-old boy could make. It was the only thing he could give her. "Do not be scared, Kayla," he said. His voice shook but was firm. "When we grow up, I will come back for you. I promise. I will find you. And when I do, I will marry you. We will be together. I promise." It was a childish vow. It came from a heart that was too big for his small chest. He did not understand what marriage really meant. He only knew it meant they would be family. It meant they would never be parted again. Kayla looked at him. A single shiny tear escaped from her eye. It looked like a drop of liquid diamond. It traced a line down her silver cheek. She squeezed his hand. "I will come back too," she whispered. "I promise." Then the people in uniforms were there. They pulled her away from him. Her fingers slipped from his hand. He watched as they led her onto one of the big gray ships. He stood there until the last ship was a tiny dot in the orange sky. He stood there until the dust settled on the ground. The camp was empty. The fields were silent. Now 8 years later, the fields were still silent. June was not a boy anymore. He was a young man of 18. His shoulders were broad from work. His hands were rough, but the memory of that promise was still inside him. It was not a childish dream anymore. It was a quiet, steady truth. It was the anchor of his life. Other boys his age dreamed of leaving the colony. June stayed. He worked the farm with his appa. He waited, because he had made a promise. Sumin put a hand on his shoulder. This brought him back to the present. "The machine is fixed. Appa needs help with the tools." June nodded and stood up. He took one last look at the empty fields and the old oak tree. The ghost of a little silver girl with honey-colored eyes seemed to wave from the shadows. He turned and followed his sister back to the workshop. The weight of his promise felt both heavy and comforting in his heart. The days on the farm fell into their usual rhythm after the water machine was fixed. June worked with his father in the fields. Sumin managed the house and their small vegetable garden. The quiet was a normal part of their lives. But one morning the quiet was broken. It started as a low hum in the distance. The sound grew quickly into a deep roar that made the windows of their small house vibrate. June and Sumin ran outside. Appa came out of his workshop wiping his hands on a cloth. In the sky above the colony's main town, a ship was descending. But it was not a rough cargo hauler or a common transport ship. This ship was long and sharp like a silver needle. Its surface was smooth and polished, reflecting the pale sun. It moved with a silent, powerful grace that was both beautiful and frightening. It was a warship of the Galactic Coalition. "Something big is happening," Appa said, his voice grim. News traveled fast through the colony. A high-level coalition delegation was visiting. Everyone who could was heading to the town square to see. June felt a strange pull in his chest, a feeling he could not name. He looked at Sumin. She nodded. They both knew they had to go. They joined the stream of people walking towards town. The air was filled with excited chatter. No one this important had ever come to their small colony. When they reached the main square, A large crowd had already gathered. June and Sumin found a spot near the back, standing on an old crate to see over the heads in front. The silver ship sat in the center of the landing field, imposing and silent. A ramp extended from its side, touching the ground without a sound. A group of people marched down the ramp. First came soldiers in dark armor, their faces hidden by helmets. They carried sleek rifles and formed a line, keeping the crowd back. Then came the officers. Their uniforms were a crisp gray and blue, with shiny badges on their chests. The man leading them was human. He had sharp features and cold eyes. He looked at the crowd as if they were insects. This was Commander Valerius. He did not smile, but June's eyes were not on the human commander. They were fixed on the figure walking just behind him. It was an Illyrian. Her skin was a brilliant, polished silver, not the soft, dusty silver he remembered. It seemed to glow with its own inner light. She stood tall and straight, her bearing full of confidence and authority. She wore a version of the coalition uniform, tailored to fit her slender form. It made her look both alien and commanding. Her hair, which he remembered as a messy cloud, was now pulled back in a severe, elegant style. Her honey-colored eyes swept over the crowd, calm and assessing. She was a woman now, a stunning, powerful woman. It was Kayla. June's breath caught in his throat. His heart began to pound so hard he thought it would break his ribs. It was her. After all these years, she had come back. Just like she promised, the heavy rock of memory in his pocket suddenly felt light as a feather. Joy, pure and bright, flooded through him. Without thinking, he pushed his way through the crowd. He ignored Sumin's surprised call behind him. He ducked under the arm of a coalition soldier who tried to stop him. He stumbled into the cleared space right in front of the delegation. He stood there, his worn work clothes covered in dust, his face flushed. He looked directly at her, a hopeful, foolish smile spreading across his face. "Kayla?" he called out. His voice was loud in the sudden hush. The honey-colored eyes turned to him. They were the same eyes, but the light in them was different. It was not warm. It was cool and distant, like two pieces of amber. They looked him up and down. They saw his dirty pants, his old shirt, his rough hands. There was no recognition. There was only a polite, detached curiosity. The human commander, Valerius, scowled. "Remove this person," he ordered a soldier. But Kayla raised a slender silver hand. The soldier stopped. She took a step toward June. Her movement was fluid and controlled. "I am Commander Kayla now," she said. Her voice was melodious, the same musical quality he remembered, but it was cold. It had no warmth, no emotion. It was like listening to a beautiful bell ring from very far away. "And you are?" The two simple words hit June like a physical blow. The smile froze on his face and then slowly died. The joy that had filled him drained away, leaving a cold, empty space behind. He felt the eyes of the entire crowd on him. He heard a few people snicker. He saw Commander Valerius's look of pure contempt. It's me," June stammered, his voice barely a whisper. "June." Commander Kayla tilted her head slightly. It was a calculated, bird-like movement. "June," she repeated as if testing the sound of a strange new word. "I do not have any record of a meeting. You must be mistaken." She turned away from him, her attention already returning to Commander Valerius. The conversation was over. To her, he was nobody. He was a local boy, a piece of the scenery, a minor interruption. A strong hand grabbed June's arm. It was Sumin. Her face was tight with anger, but her eyes were full of pity for her brother. "Come on, June," she said softly, pulling him back. "Let's go." He let her lead him away. He was numb. He did not feel his legs moving. The crowd parted for them, their stares feeling like needles on his skin. He did not look back at the silver woman in the uniform. The promise, the anchor of his life for 8 years, had shattered into dust. He had kept his promise in his heart every single day. But for her, it seemed it had never existed at all. She had come back, but the girl he knew had not. The walk back from town was silent. June felt like he was moving through a thick fog. Sumin walked beside him, her anger a quiet heat next to his cold numbness. When they got home, Appa was waiting. He had heard the news from a neighbor. He looked at June's face and did not ask any questions. He just put a hand on his son's shoulder and squeezed. It was a small comfort, but it was real. Later that afternoon, an official-looking vehicle pulled up to their farm. A coalition officer got out. He told them that due to a shortage of proper housing in the colony, some of the junior officers would be stationed with local families. It was to be a gesture of human-alien cooperation. The Park family, he said, had been chosen to host Commander Kyla and one of her aides. Sumin's mouth fell open in protest, but Appa spoke first. He was a practical man. He knew you did not say no to the coalition. He simply nodded. "We have room," he said. June felt a confusing mix of dread and a tiny, foolish spark of hope. She was going to be here, in his home. A few hours later, the vehicle returned. Commander Kayla stepped out. She had changed into a more casual but still impeccably clean version of her uniform. She moved through their small, cluttered yard as if she were walking on a polished starship deck. Her aide, a young Ilarian male, followed her with a datapad. Appa welcomed them formally. Sumin stood with her arms crossed, not even trying to hide her dislike. Kayla acknowledged them with a slight polite nod. Her eyes passed over June as if he were a piece of furniture. She was given the small spare room. June and Sumin had to share the other room for the duration of her stay. As she walked past the kitchen, June saw her glance at the simple worn table, the old stove, the faded curtains. There was no expression on her face, but he felt a wave of shame. His home must seem so poor and primitive to her. That evening, after a quiet meal where Kayla ate little and spoke less, June found her standing in the backyard. She was looking at the old oak tree. His heart leaped. This was a memory. A real one. He walked up to her slowly. "That's our tree," he said softly. "Remember? We used to play there every day." Kayla did not turn. She kept looking at the tree. "I recall this biological specimen," she said, her voice flat. "Its age and size are notable for this region." June's hope flickered. "I taught you how to climb it. You fell once and scraped your arm. I ran to get water to clean it." For a moment she was silent. Then she spoke. "That was a different life, June. A life of weakness. The coalition educated me. They showed me that sentiment is a chain. It holds you back. It makes you vulnerable." "Vulnerable?" June asked, confused. "Caring about someone isn't weak. It is a distraction," she stated, finally turning to look at him. Her amber eyes were like glass. "Efficiency, order, logic. These are the principles of strength. The coalition saved my people from their own chaotic emotions. They saved me. Saved you." June's voice was barely a whisper. "It looks like they erased you." A flicker of something, annoyance, crossed her face. It was the first real emotion he had seen in her. "They perfected me. The girl you knew was a frightened refugee. I am a commander in the most powerful fleet in this sector. There is no comparison." She turned and walked back to the house, leaving him alone under the branches of their tree. Later that night, June could not sleep. He got up to get a glass of water. As he passed the door to the small room where Kayla was staying, he heard voices. He stopped. He knew he should not listen, but he could not help it. It was Kayla and Commander Valerius. He must have come to the farm for a late meeting. "This assignment is a waste of time, Commander Kayla," Valerius said, his voice dripping with disdain. "This colony is a backwater. The people here are primitive. Their technology is a joke. Look at this dwelling. It is falling apart." June held his breath, waiting for Kayla to defend them, to say something about the family's kindness. There was a pause. Then Kayla's cool, clear voice replied, "The assessment is accurate, Commander. The lack of development is notable, but the mission parameters require our presence here." She did not disagree. She did not say they are good people. She spoke about them as if they were data points. June felt his last spark of hope die. Sumin was right. The girl he knew was gone. The next day, June tried one more time. He found an old, flat stone hidden in the roots of the oak tree. When they were children, they had used a piece of coal to draw on it. They had drawn a stick figure picture of the two of them holding hands. He had forgotten about it until now. He brushed off the dirt. The drawing was faded, but you could still see it. A little human boy and a little silver girl. He brought it to Kayla. She was in the yard, looking at a report on her datapad. "I found this," he said, holding out the stone. "We made this together." She took the stone. She looked at the childish drawing. Her face showed nothing. She handed it back to him. "A trivial artifact from a primitive time," she said. "My focus must be on the future, not scribbles from the past." June took the stone back. His hand felt heavy. He looked at her, this stranger in a uniform, and finally accepted the truth. The Kayla he loved, The one he made a promise to was not just gone. She had been taken away and replaced with this. He had spent 8 years waiting for a ghost. And now the ghost had returned only to tell him that he was the one who did not matter anymore. He turned and walked away, the flat, heavy stone feeling like the only real thing left in his world. The days settled into a new, uncomfortable rhythm. Commander Kayla and her aide moved through the Park household like quiet ghosts. They were polite, they were clean, and they were utterly distant. June stopped trying to talk to her. The hope in his heart had been replaced by a dull, heavy ache. He focused on his work, fixing the farm machinery with his father, the physical labor a welcome distraction from his thoughts. Suman's anger, however, had not cooled. She spoke to Kayla only when necessary, her voice sharp and cold. She saw the way June looked at the commander when she wasn't watching, a look of such profound loss that it made Suman's own heart hurt for her brother. The end began with a low, shuddering groan that came from the center of town. It was not a sound anyone had heard before. It was a deep, metal-on-metal screech that made the ground tremble. A moment later, a piercing alarm began to wail across the colony. It was the emergency siren. June and Appa ran out of the workshop. Suman came out of the house, her eyes wide with fear. In the distance over the town, a plume of ugly black smoke was rising into the sky. Then the colony's public address system crackled to life. A panicked voice echoed through the streets. Reactor core breach. Immediate evacuation. All citizens proceed to the designated shelters. Reactor. The word sent a chill through everyone. The colony's main power source was old. It was a piece of outdated coalition technology that the humans barely understood how to maintain. A breach meant radiation. It meant fire. It meant the end of their home. Chaos erupted. People poured from their houses, grabbing children, carrying what they could. The streets filled with shouting and crying. June and his family stood frozen for a moment, the enormity of the disaster sinking in. Then they saw the Silver Coalition ship. Its engines glowed with a bright blue light. It was preparing to leave. "They are abandoning us," Suman whispered, her voice trembling with rage and fear. They ran towards the town square, the logical place to go. The scene there was worse. The air smelled of ozone and burning plastic. The reactor building was humming with an unstable, dangerous energy. And there, in front of their ship, stood Commander Valerius and his soldiers. Kayla stood beside him, her face unreadable. Valerius was speaking into a communicator. "The situation is unsalvageable. The reactor is primitive, its cascade failure is complete. The radiation levels will be lethal in under an hour. We are declaring this colony a loss. All coalition personnel prepare for immediate departure." A cry of despair went up from the crowd. They were being left to die. Appa stepped forward, his face grim. "You cannot leave. You have equipment. You can help us." Valerius looked at Appa as if he were a bug. "Helping you would risk coalition assets and personnel for no strategic gain. These are acceptable casualties. Board the ship now, Commander Kayla." June's eyes were fixed on Kayla. This was it. This was the final test. Would she follow her orders? Would she turn her back on all of them, on him, once and for all? Kayla stood perfectly still. Her coalition training, years of discipline, screamed at her to obey. To be logical. To see these people as numbers on a screen, not as living beings. Her eyes met Valerius's cold stare. Then for a brief second they flickered towards June. He was not looking at her with anger or blame. He was just looking at her. And in his eyes she did not see a primitive colonist. She saw the boy who gave her his last piece of rice cake. She saw the friend who taught her the word for friend. She saw the person who made her a promise when she had nothing else in the world. The chain of her indoctrination, stretched to its limit, finally snapped. "No," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the panic like a knife. Valerius stared at her, stunned. "What did you say?" Kayla turned to face him fully. Her silver skin seemed to glow with a new intensity. Her back was straight, her voice now clear and strong. "No, we will not abandon them." "That is a direct order, Commander," Valerius shouted. "Your order is morally wrong," Kayla replied, her tone icy and precise. "And it is tactically stupid." She turned her back on him, a gesture of ultimate disrespect. She strode towards June and his family. The crowd watched, holding its breath. She stopped in front of June. The cold commander was gone. In her eyes was a fierce, desperate light he had not seen since they were children. The reactor's core regulator, she said quickly, her words tumbling out. It is based on old Alarian crystal harmonics. The Coalition never upgraded it. Your people do not have the knowledge to fix it. But I do. June looked at her, his own fear pushed aside by a surge of determination. What do you need? I can stabilize the core, but I cannot do it alone. I need someone who knows this town, who knows the access tunnels, the maintenance shafts, the quickest routes. June did not hesitate. He nodded. I know them. I played in them as a kid. For the first time since she returned, something like a real smile, small and sharp, touched Kayla's lips. Good, then let's go. He turned to his father and sister. Appa, Sumin, help get people to a safe distance. We will stop this. Sumin grabbed his arm. Be careful, brother. June and Kayla did not wait for Valerius's response. They started running, not towards the ship, but towards the heart of the danger. The boy who had waited and the woman who had returned were finally working together. The promise was not about marriage anymore. It was about this. It was about not leaving someone behind. It was about fighting for a home together. The world narrowed to the pounding of their feet and the scream of the alarm. June led the way, his knowledge of the colony's underbelly as natural to him as breathing. He ducked into a narrow alley, Kayla close behind. He kicked aside a loose grate covering a maintenance shaft. This way, he yelled over the noise. It leads directly to the reactor's lower level. It's faster than the main door. He dropped into the darkness. Kayla followed without a second's hesitation. The tunnel was tight and dark, smelling of damp metal and dust. June moved through it with the confidence of memory, his hands brushing against familiar pipes. Kayla's Ilarian eyes glowed softly, providing just enough light to see. They emerged into a hot, humming room. The air crackled with energy. This was the reactor control room. Red lights flashed on the panels and warning messages scrolled across broken screens. The sound was a deep, threatening roar. Kayla went straight to the main console. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up schematics that were gibberish to June. The regulator crystal is fracturing, she said, her voice calm despite the chaos. I can realign it, but the access panel is sealed. The emergency release is on the other side of the coolant chamber. It will be flooded with radiation. I can get there, June said. He pointed to a small round hatch in the wall. That ventilation shaft. It goes around the chamber. It comes out right by the panel. It was a tight, dangerous squeeze, but it was the only way. Go, Kayla said, her eyes meeting his. There was no coldness in them now. Only trust. I will talk you through it from here. Be fast, June squeezed into the shaft. It was a tight fit for his shoulders. He crawled forward, the metal hot against his hands. Kayla's voice came through a small comms unit she had given him. Turn left at the first junction, she instructed. Then go straight for about 10 meters. He followed her directions. He could feel a strange warmth through the metal, a sign of the leaking radiation. He pushed the fear down. He thought of his father. He thought of Sumin. He thought of Kayla, finally fighting with him, not against him. He reached the end of the shaft. Another grate blocked his way. He pushed it open and dropped into a small room. In front of him was a sealed metal panel with a large wheel on it. The regulator was behind there. I am at the panel, he said into the comm. Good. Kayla's voice was tense. Now turn the wheel. It will be stiff. June grabbed the wheel with both hands. He put all his strength into it. It did not move. He grunted, his muscles straining. He braced his feet against the wall and pulled again. With a loud, rusty shriek, the wheel began to turn. He spun it until the seal broke with a hiss of air. The panel swung open. Inside was a complex mess of wires and glowing components. In the center was a crystal about the size of his fist. It was pulsing with an angry, unstable red light. A web of cracks was spreading across its surface. I see it, June said. It looks bad. You need to remove it, Kayla said. There is a replacement in a compartment to your left. Be careful. Do not touch the crystal with your bare skin. June found the compartment. Inside was a new crystal, glowing with a soft, steady blue light. He put on the thick gloves he found there. He reached into the panel. His hands were steady. He was a mechanic's son. He knew how to handle delicate things. Carefully, he unclipped the broken red crystal. It was hot even through the gloves. He set it aside in a shielded box. Then he took the new blue crystal. He slid it into place. It clicked softly. It is in, he said. Now get out of there, Kayla ordered. The system will try to reboot. It will purge the contaminated coolant. Go, June did not need to be told twice. He scrambled back into the ventilation shaft. As he crawled, he heard a loud whooshing sound behind him. A wave of steam and chemical smell filled the shaft. He crawled faster. Back in the control room, Kayla was still at the console. Her fingers were a blur. Alarms were still sounding, but the deep, threatening roar of the reactor was beginning to quiet. The red flashing lights on the panel started to switch to a calm, steady green. The shaking stopped. The silence that followed was sudden and profound. The only sound was the hum of the now stable reactor and their own heavy breathing. They stood there for a moment, looking at each other across the room. They were both covered in grime and sweat. June's hands were shaking from the effort. Kayla's perfect uniform was smudged with dirt. The main door to the control room hissed open. Commander Valerius stood there, his face a mask of fury. His soldiers were behind him. "You disobeyed a direct order, Commander Kayla," he spat. "You risked a coalition asset for these primitives." Kayla turned to face him. She was no longer the subordinate. She stood with a new, unshakable authority. "I prevented a catastrophe that your cowardice would have caused," she replied, her voice cold and clear. "These primitives are the reason this colony still stands. My actions were correct. Yours were not." She reached up and with a sharp, deliberate motion she ripped the coalition insignia from the collar of her uniform. She let it fall to the floor. It clattered in the quiet room. "I am resigning my commission," she said. Effective immediately. Valerius was speechless. He stared at the insignia on the floor, then at Kayla's determined face. He knew he had lost. With a final, hateful glare, he turned and left, his soldiers following him. Later, when the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, June and Kayla walked back to the farm. The colony was safe. The Park family was safe. They stopped under the old oak tree, the place where it all began. Kayla looked at June, her honey-colored eyes finally soft, finally real. "I am sorry, June," she whispered. "For everything," she told him then. She told him about the re-education centers, the constant lessons that her past was shameful, that her feelings were a sickness, that friendship and love were weaknesses to be eliminated. She explained how she had to bury the little girl so deep inside her just to survive, to become the perfect emotionless commander. "I thought I had to forget you to be strong," she said, a single diamond-like tear tracing a path through the dirt on her silver cheek. "But today, you were the strong one. Your humanity, that was the real strength, not my cold logic." June listened. He did not interrupt. When she was finished, he simply reached out and took her hand. Her slender silver fingers curled around his rough, calloused ones. It felt familiar. It felt like coming home. "I promised I would be here for you," he said softly, "and I am." The childhood promise of marriage had been a simple, innocent thing. It was a child's way of saying, "I will never leave you." They were not those children anymore. They were a man and a woman shaped by pain and hardship. The simple promise had grown into something deeper. It was a choice to stand together, a choice to fight for each other. They stood there under the tree as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. They were not the same people they were a week ago. They were something new. They had a past, but they also had a future they would build together, not because of a childish vow, but because of the adults they had become, and for the first time in a very long time they were both exactly where they were supposed to be.